Perfect. All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Hispanic Heritage Month closing webinar, Beyond Itin Lending. It is my pleasure to introduce you to this discussion we will have about Itin lending, but also about the nuances of serving the Hispanic community and how Itin lending is a cog in a whole system of changes and culture and staffing and other aspects of your credit union's operation. And of course, our panelists will go through that. Now, before we start, I have to talk a bit about some housekeeping issues. First of all, we do want you to participate in this webinar. So you will have the option to put your questions on our comment box, or also to use the question and answer button at the bottom of your screen. So please, if at any point you have a question about anything that one of our panelists is discussing or any subject, please let us know. We have allotted considerable time to answer your questions. Also, this webinar will be recorded for future use, and we will distribute it through the Inclusiv network and the Juntos Avanzamos network. Once again, thank you for joining us. I'll go ahead and start with an introduction of Inclusiv and Juntos Avanzamos before we transition over to our panelists and to the nitty-gritty of this conversation. Now, first of all, Inclusiv, many of you are already familiar with Inclusiv, but those of you that do not know about Inclusiv, Inclusiv is a network and an association of credit unions that are committed to serving, that believe that financial inclusion and empowerment is a fundamental right. We're basically a network of credit unions that believe in financial inclusion and in community development, and we do so every day. Most of our members are CDFI credit unions and MDI credit unions and low-income designated credit unions. Now, the Inclusiv network has 407 participating credit unions as of today, and I'll talk a bit more about that in a second. But before, I just wanted to wish you all a happy Hispanic Heritage Month, and thank you for all of the interest that all of you have shown during this month in our activities and other events celebrating our diverse Hispanic heritage. Now, this photo is a photo that Pablo, who is not here, generally tends to use when talking about the Hispanic community and Hispanic Heritage Month, because of the diversity that is shown in that picture, and that represents our diversity as Hispanics and Latinos. Now, in terms of the Inclusiv network, the Inclusiv network has grown dramatically the last year. We have 407 credit unions serving more than 15 million people throughout 47 states, Washington, D.C., and Puerto Rico. Collectively, our network has almost $215 billion in assets, and we have grown by 84 credit unions this year. 240 of our members are in CDFI, and many of the rest of the members are on their way to becoming CDFI or exploring CDFI certification. And we do have a powerful contingent as well of cooperativas that are based and located in Puerto Rico, whose primary language is Spanish, and I hail from Puerto Rico, so always a pleasure to have cooperativas from my homeland join Inclusiv and learn more about CDFI and leverage all the resources that CDFI certification can give a credit union. Now, in terms of the Juntos Avanzamos network, Juntos Avanzamos is a program of Inclusiv. It was actually founded and created by the Cornerstone League, and then brought national in 2015 by Inclusiv because as part of a memorandum of understanding that we signed with the League. And since then, Juntos Avanzamos has grown exponentially. There are 116 credit unions that are part of the network. The network serves 8.6 million consumers in 930 community branches in 27 states. Collectively, the Juntos Avanzamos networks holds $123 billion in assets, and we work with a plethora of industry and community partners to be able to guide and expand the network's reach. Now, if there's something that I want you to take away from this webinar, apart from the great conversation that we're going to have with our panelists, is that serving the Hispanic community is imperative in our times. And Juntos Avanzamos offers a financial inclusion framework for you to be able to do that in a thoughtful and holistic manner. If you decide to pursue the Juntos Avanzamos designation, these are some of the things that are common to a network that we would expect your credit union to do. Ideally, the first part is, of course, to eliminate barriers, and that means accept alternate forms of ID at account opening, including matrícula consular and foreign passports, and to provide loan opportunities to Itin holders. The main idea being that everybody, regardless of their immigration status, should have access to affordable and accessible financial products that only credit unions can offer. Now, as part of the Juntos Avanzamos designation, we will also look at your bilingual and bicultural capacity to make sure that the members of the Hispanic community that visit your branches can have access to somebody that speaks their language and that they feel that they can trust. Now, generally speaking, the products across Juntos Avanzamos credit unions are affordable and flexible. They're transparent, and they're accessible and convenient. So if you want more information about Juntos Avanzamos, I will be dropping some information about how you can contact me in the chat box shortly. And of course, as I was saying, Juntos Avanzamos is supported by many industry partners. We work directly with our national industry partners, which include leagues, trade associations, as well as other consulting organizations that are focused on financial inclusion. They're actually part of the Juntos Avanzamos Advisory Committee and help guide the direction of the Juntos Avanzamos program and its expansion across the United States. And of course, we also work with national community partners, including the Mexican Consulate Network, which is the biggest consulate network in the US, including the Ventanilla Asesoría Financiera, and other organizations such as Catholic Charities, Unidos, and the Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service. Before we start, some events that we want you to take a look at for Hispanic Heritage Month. This is an event that's going to be on October 30 at 2:30, and it's basically focused on Latino leadership in regulatory agencies. It seems like it's going to be fascinating. So if you have some time, we invite you to register, and we'll, if you're interested, you can write to me and can give you the link with the presentation once we share all of this information. We also have an internal event on October 21st at 12 Central, and it's actually a webinar that we're doing in conjunction with WOCU in Spanish for young Latino professionals, and also with Ncua. If you're a young Latino professional and you are watching this webinar and you're interested in engaging in a conversation with credit unions in Latin America about their challenges and talking about your challenges, this is the forum for you to access. That'll be on October 21st. Registration information is on the bottom, and we'll share that on the chat as well. And finally, please make sure to block your calendars for the NCUA's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Summit 2021. We're going to be having a session on serving the Hispanic community. There's also going to be another session that Inclusiv is going to be hosting as well. I'm participating in for faith-based credit unions. So, the programming behind this event is incredible. If you have some time, I know that operations are operations, but if you have some time to log into some of those sessions, please, you're invited to do so. And having said that, it is now time to move over to our panel, composed of Juntos Avanzamos credit unions across the United States, Richard Romero from Seattle Credit Union, Rosa Franco from Neighborhood Trust Federal Credit Union, and John Wilkenning from Notre Dame Federal Credit Union. Now, I will read their bios in a second, and then we can start with our panel. And of course, we want to thank our panelists for donating their time and experience to Inclusiv and Juntos Avanzamos to be able to talk about this important subject of Itin lending. Now, Richard Romero is the leader of one of the oldest credit unions in Seattle, and he has placed a focus on leading an organization that makes sure everyone prospers and not just those with easy access to financial services. He's also an Inclusiv board chair. Over recent years, he has led his organization into areas that focus on populations that are mostly ignored by financial institutions, by becoming a CDFI, LDI, and Juntos Avanzamos credit union. Additionally, Seattle Credit Union has led the way in creating products such as citizenship loans, Itin real estate loans, and Itin auto and personal loans, as well as low down payment loans that assist home buyers in affording housing. In his 6 years on the board of directors at Inclusiv, he has been able to lend his experience and passion to ensure that community development credit unions have the resources to serve underserved communities. And I can attest to that. Richard has really been very helpful, especially when we require him to talk to other credit unions about his experience in financial inclusion. So thank you, Richard. Richard, if you could talk to us a bit about your credit union and of course, your Itin lending experience.
Sure, thank you, Renee. As Renee mentioned, got caught by the mute button. Well, thank you, Renee. As you mentioned, I'm the CEO of Seattle Credit Union, and we are located in downtown Seattle, and we are just over $1 billion in assets. I took over almost 10 years ago. In February, it'll be 10 years. And our journey, it's been an interesting and long journey. Probably around 7 or 8 years ago, we decided to really take a focus on the income disparity happening in Seattle. A lot of news around Seattle being the home of Amazon, Microsoft, and all these giant corporations. And there's a lot of prosperity happening, and the wealth gap has been growing tremendously. And at one point, our credit union decided to go back to its roots of being a financial cooperative and focusing on people putting resources together to help people who don't have access to those resources. So we embarked on a journey probably roughly 8 years ago to reinvent the credit union, change our mission and vision, change strategic direction, and really retrain and reorient the staff. We diversified our board, diversified our teams. We went multilingual, so we support multiple languages. And as we started down the journey of getting our LID and our CDFI certifications, Juntos Avanzamos came out, and I think we were the second credit union in Washington State to become a Juntos Avanzamos credit union. And that really helped us understand what it takes to serve an ethnic market. It's no secret that a large number of low-income and minority households in Seattle are Hispanic. So we've put a focus in that area. And I think the biggest thing to communicate today is that serving these markets is not just simply rolling out new products. It takes a significant strategic change, everything from implementing the programs operationally to really making sure that staff understands who they're talking to, what their experiences are, and how to communicate with people and understand their circumstances. And so I think there's a very big risk in Itin lending, but not from the perspective that most people think. Our portfolio performs really well, and I'm happy to give some statistics later on. I think the risk is more from really not understanding the market and saying the wrong things, acting the wrong way, treating people the wrong way, and ruining reputations out, not only for the individual credit union, but for the entire credit union movement and Itin lending in itself. So I'll take a pause there and let my fellow panelists move in here.
Thank you so much, Richard. From that introduction, it seems that our discussion is going to be more interesting than I thought, which is great. All right, thank you, Richard. Now moving on to our next panelist, Rosa Franco. Rosa Franco is Director of Lending and Development at Neighborhood Trust Federal Credit Union here, well, not here, in Washington Heights in New York City. She has built her career in economic development and financial inclusion. Rosa oversees the loan portfolio that includes consumer and home ownership lending programs and small businesses, and commercial loan programs as well. As part of her development role, Rosa participates in the design, implementation and monitoring of strategies that help the organization expand and retain members, growing the loan portfolio. Her experience in microfinance and small business sector promotion includes work with local communities in urban and rural areas of Latin American countries. This experience helped her understand many of the challenges faced by immigrants and low and middle income communities in the United States. And also, like Richard, Rosa has been, and Neighborhood Trust have been a principal ally of the Juntos Avanzamos network, always offering her expertise to other credit unions that are looking to serve the Hispanic market in a holistic way. So Rosa, thank you for taking some of your time to join us. And again, could you talk to us a bit about your credit union and your history with Itin lending?
Sure. Well, thank you everyone for inviting me. I think this is a great opportunity for me to share the experiences we have since, well, some years now at Neighborhood Trust. My organization is a CDFI, Neighborhood Trust Federal Credit Union, and it's right now we are at $20 million in assets, or around that size. We grew exponentially in the recent years, but it was chartered in 1996. So Neighborhood Trust is located in a predominantly immigrant community in Washington Heights in Upper Manhattan of New York. And one of the main, let's say the basic model we have is that we try to embed financial education with all our products and services. The main reason why Neighborhood Trust was created back then in the 90s is that even when it's located in a predominantly immigrant community, there were a very limited number of financial institutions. Say that the journey that Neighborhood Trust had was kind of the natural path that it had to take, but also that in terms of the reason why we developed the modules and the way that we work is thanks to the strategic partnerships we have, the financial education programs we offer that allow us to not only interact with the community, but also understand where their needs are. So just to give you an idea, we started offering assistance to people who don't have tax IDs since 2006. And since 2008 to 2009, we were offering these Itin holders the option to establish or start establishing credit. After that, we've been implementing and opened the door to the Itin holders who establish credit to access all the loan products we have. With that said, I can also say that we don't have any specific Itin lending program because we decided that it was much better to have a standardized policy in terms of underwriting that will be implemented across the board. So far, it's working very well. Our delinquency is also very low. And when we participated in some initiatives that were promoted by Inclusiv 5 or 3 years ago, we realized that our delinquency for that specific group of borrowers was also very low. In 2017, we decided to also push a little bit harder in order to offer mortgage lending for Itin holders, because in the past it was very difficult to close this type of loans, mostly for legal or kind of finding the way to close the loan on the legal way. With that surpass, I think we are now moving towards different, to achieve different goals, more goals. And another point that helped us in implementation of working with Itin holders is the partnerships with the consulates. For example, the Mexican consulate is a big ally of Neighborhood Trust, or we are a big allies of this consulate, but at the same time, we develop partnerships with other financial institutions and other community-based organizations that have a strong relationship with the Itin community. I think I will leave it for now here and give you more information later during the debate, right, the panel.
Gracias, Rosa. And thank you so much for that. Now moving on to our third panelist, our friend, John Wilkenning. Now, John is Chief Retail Officer of Notre Dame Federal Credit Union. He graduated from Indiana State University with a Bachelor of Science in Communication and Public Relations. In 1998, John completed the University of Notre Dame Stanford Executive Banking Program. Over his 25 years in banking, John assumed leadership roles everywhere he has served. Upon arrival at Notre Dame Federal Credit Union as the Chief Retail Officer, the credit union doubled its loan volume in his first 9 months, and the growth continues, and that is so. And actually, maybe John's credit union was a monster when it came to PPP lending and the origination of PPP loans in his region, and was recognized as such. So congratulations for that, John. John, talk to us a bit about your credit union and your Itin lending journey.
Thank you. You know, my Itin lending journey, I guess, started in boyhood, to be honest with you, Renee. You know, I'm sitting with you today at my newest location, Whiting, Indiana. And of course, Notre Dame has a national name and we can go anywhere. We've expanded to Phoenix. We do, you know, business in all 50 states. But the reason we are in Whiting, Indiana today is it's my hometown. And this town is 40% Latino. And I began to talk about the expansion in the Lake County and Whiting, Indiana 6 years ago, because in this community, I think the Latinos have been ignored and underserved. But that's happened nationwide. We are working in the most discriminatory business in the history of mankind. I'm not going to pull punches. And it was through my upbringing, you know, in a Latino neighborhood, in a Latino town, that those folks were my family. They were my friends. And through my career, I got really sick and tired, and there's no nice way for me to say it. I got really sick and tired of the banks thinking that good service to the Latino population was a part-time teller with a button on that said she spoke Spanish. And so many times all you're getting is an interpreter. And that really frustrated me. Notre Dame Federal Credit Union is 81 years old now. And when I arrived 6 years ago, we were a $400 million credit union. We are now up into the 900 millions. But I had the most earth-shattering, life-changing moment that an executive could have. I had a branch over in the Western Avenue neighborhood of South Bend that is, you know, all Latino. And I kid you not, the banks built these fancy Taj Mahals in that neighborhood. And you know what? Nobody came. But the little Notre Dame Federal Credit Union was inside a grocery store, inside the hallway vestibule with 2 desks and a teller line. And the people were lined up outside the door. When I would go to see Maria Vera on Fridays, and Edwin Santiago, Puerto Rican legend, they would call him the mayor of Mayflower. People would be lined up the doors on the Friday. And you know what? The desks were old, the branch, you know what? It was the statement. And so when the grocery store started to talk about building a nice, beautiful store for the neighborhood, my chief executive officer, Tom Gripe, you know, who is a pioneer and a leader in banking for all inclusive. He said, we're going in there, but you know what? Many people have in-store branches. I do not have an in-store branch. I have a branch that happens to be partners with the grocery store. We have full desks. We have a full community center. We have private rooms. You know, you walk through a grocery store and you see 3 people talking all day over an island and nothing going on. When you go in the Notre Dame Federal Credit Union at Martin's on Mayflower Avenue, we have 3-4 bankers experienced in all aspects of this. And so we set out to build a Latino banking team, commercial lending, helping with business plans, financial literacy in the community centers, partnering with the businesses, an expert consumer lender, an expert investor, commercial lender, MLO, mortgage, serve the community and serve them in all aspects. Besides, you know what? We'll do a lot of chastising today, the people that maybe are getting into this business for the wrong reasons. They see the Hispanic buying power. They see the future. They see the growth market. That's not what this is about. If you're getting in and you're listening to this webinar today, your heart has to be in it, that you just care about people, that you love people, and that you want everybody to have the same opportunities. And today I am very proud to announce, for the first time in the history of Notre Dame Federal Credit Union, with our record growth, we're going to get it right. We have formed our first director of SEG development, and it is Senor Enrique Maganales. And we are going out into the schools and the churches now with a full team of 6 to 8 people to teach financial literacy, teach entrepreneurs into the Latino market, and all markets. And see, that's what I keep saying, all markets. As long as we're making a difference or we're labeling, we're not there. But I am, and believe me, and I don't want to get ahead of myself on this webinar, and I get passionate. I really do get passionate. But the journey of Notre Dame Federal Credit Union for me has been life-changing. But honestly, it's really about things that I was working on in my career. I was at a big Illinois bank with Enrique Maganales. I brought him with me. He's been with me 25 years and been a leader, okay? Sandra Gomez today just became branch manager. Senora Sandra Gomez just became branch manager of our new Whiting branch today. And I'm telling you, I'm leading 10 branches right now. And of course, our national branch. And I'm very proud that 7 of my branch managers are now Latinas. And two of them came through our training program from A to Z, started their first career. So we are focusing day to day, house by house, kitchen table by kitchen table. But there's a lot of myths out there. But I'm going to say one thing too. There's a lot of frauds out there, and I'm going to call you out when I see you, but I'll save that. I don't want to get too much into my statistics, but we are at $25 million in Itin lending. We are at $13 million in real estate. I have a program for every Latino in America, okay, regardless of whether the government recognizes you or not, that in a 2-year program, I can lead you to homeownership. And again, it's all built on trust. It's all being part of the community. And, you know, my Spanish is very bad, but you know what? I understand it because I've always, I know waking up in the morning in Goose Island, the south side of Whiting, and running over to the Rodriguez house to get the boys for school, and the beautiful smell of the great food, and their mothers being my madre. That's why I'm motivated. And Notre Dame we're going to do this at the most basic level of financial empowerment, financial literacy classes, and building trust in the community. But we're also going to act as the archangel. So anybody that's out there trying to take advantage, that's not doing this for the proper reason, you're not going to be able to hide. There's no rock that we won't find you. And we're going to talk about pricing, because there's some people out there that are taking advantage, even as they're trying to say, look what we're doing. Well, people like Renee and Pablo and Richard Romero and Rosa, we know why you're doing it, and we're going to expose it. So thank you, Renee. There's my intro.
John, I am always in awe of your passion. You really know how to rile up a crowd. So thank you for that, really. And of course, indeed, Violeta, that's right. Fantastic intro. And Catherine is, yes, definitely preach. So so we're going to transition now into this discussion. At first, we thought, why don't we just ask questions to the panelists? But then what we've decided is to pretty much talk about all that our panelists have exposed in the introduction, but to do it by visiting Itin Myths. Now, some of them are myths that you have heard about, mitos, all the time. Others are we're going to discuss to cause some reflection, as John has said. So I'm going to start right away with the first myth, and that myth is pretty straightforward. And the myth is Itin lending is risky. Richard, can you start talking about that?
I'm still trying to catch my breath after listening to John. So yeah, there's a lot of myths out there. And I was really caught off guard, at the very beginning of this journey. And I'll start in the boardroom. I remember talking to my board. This was years ago, not my current board, but the board when I first started, and talking about doing low income lending, and a director, saying, "Oh, that's a fantastic idea. We can put GPS trackers in all their cars so we can turn them off when they stop paying." And it struck me right between the eyes at that moment that there's this connection and this myth or misunderstanding of low income equals subprime lending. And to me, they're two different things. I worked at a credit union once upon a time, long time ago, that was heavy into subprime lending, and is no longer here because of it. And so my first task was to disconnect subprime from low income. And I think that was really important. And for me, that's deep and personal because I grew up low income myself, and what I try to tell people is, I remember my mom's single parent when we got our first car, it was a 1971 Volkswagen. And it was the center of our family. We could now vacation. We didn't have to carry groceries in the rain down the street. And the last thing, my mother kept that car for 14 years. It's the last thing she didn't even want to sell it. We had to force her to sell it because it was like this first step towards normalcy and being able to do things outside of, the block that you live on. And so what I try to tell people is that, when you lend a low income person money to buy a car, that's a lifeline for them. It gets them to work, it gets the kids to school, to daycare, gets them a vacation, it gets them transportation. And that's a different value than someone who's buying their fourth car and it's a 90,000 BMW or Tesla and they have a hiccup in their income and they turn in the keys. To me, those are two completely different types of lending. So that was the first thing, was to dispel the myth of low income equals subprime. The other myth too is, well, you're lending to illegal immigrants. What if they get deported? Well, I think you're getting a little far ahead of yourselves because anyone we lend to, there's risk. You do a mortgage to anybody, there's a risk that they don't pay it. So what happens? Whether they're an immigrant, a non-immigrant, an illegal, a legal, whoever they are, you have a protocol. You foreclose on a home, you sell it, and hopefully you get some or more money back. There's no difference. I don't understand why people think it's riskier. In my eyes, it's actually less risky because typically Itin households band together to purchase a home. And let's just say for some unfortunate reason, someone gets deported, there's multiple households that are making that mortgage payment and making sure that people stay in that home. So to me, those are the types of myths that we need to dispel. Our Itin portfolio is about $23 million. The bulk of it is in auto loans. And just to give you an example, our mainstream auto loans, I'll call them, delinquencies are 1.02%. Our Itin delinquency is 0.60. So it's almost half the delinquency rate. And so again, when I mention those numbers to people, they're surprised. They always think, well, I thought Itin would be double or triple or quadruple. It's not. So I'll take a pause there on one of the big myths.
Thank you, Richard. And I do have to say that the numbers that you're referring to are similar to what we see across the Juntos network and in credit unions that offer Itin. One thing is what people think, another thing is the reality, and the reality is that they are low risk. But that's a different conversation. Now, John, you were talking about pricing in your introduction, and Richard just made the comment that I love this when he made that comparison that some people, since they think that, or some institutions, since they think that Itin is risky, it's kind of akin to subprime lending, and so kind of the same structure should apply in pricing. John, can you expand a bit on that?
Absolutely. And let's go at the most basic level to what Richard made so many great points there. Subprime lending, and I disagree with that too, by the way. Welcome to America, where we kick people when they're down. Let's give the highest rates to the people that are struggling the most. Congratulations, United States of America. But subprime lending is for folks that have had loans, that have had some rough credit, and they're getting back in the game. That's not what's going on in the Latino population. These folks aren't getting they're not getting a chance. They haven't messed up. They haven't not paid anybody. They just haven't been given opportunities. Nobody wants to give them a credit card, but you can't get on an airplane or get a hotel room without one. No, we're going to give you a credit card. No, we're going to give you unsecured loans. No, we're going to give you a car.
And we're not going to price you. We're not going to enslave you and impoverish you. You know what? You're destroying people's futures. You know what? When I drive by a buy here, pay here lot, I have educated my team of financial physicians. They aren't selling cars to the Latinos. They're selling credit. And all they've got to do with their subprime formula is get 6, 10, 12 payments back because they're all front loaded at high interest rates and it guarantees a profit. And then they go out and repossess the car and then they sell it to the next sucker. If we want to save our neighborhoods, seriously, we need to get rid of here, buy here, pay here lots and the credit unions because the banks will never do it. But the credit unions need to go in and take care of that business because as Richard said, that car is the lifeline. Folks, I don't have one Itin loan, right? Do you hear what I just said? I don't have one Itin loan on my delinquency report out of $25 million. Not one. And you know, I guess, you know, COVID's kind of ruined my life because I have never closed a loan with a Latino that I didn't get a hug from and get the family handshake where there's an arm around the shoulder. Because when we take care of them and we take care of them right, we're family. And that's what so many people in the United States don't understand. When you build trust and partnership with the Latino population, I'm going to say it, okay? And I'm an Irishman. The most honorable people on this earth are the Latinos. And they don't forget. My mother was walking down the street in Whiting, and Miguel Rodriguez, who grew up with me, just retired from the United States Navy. And they gave him 3 coins to give away to people in his life. And he held one of these, Richard, for 20 years to see my mother and gave it to her. That is the relationship with the Latinos, that it's from childhood. And when you provide a mortgage or a car or financial literacy to the children or counsel them getting their first child into college, which is always intimidating, right? When we can be that resource to answer all questions, there is no delinquency. Why would you price this loan? I mean, why would you give Latinos a higher price? You know why? Because you're seizing the opportunity to make money because you know not everybody's helping them out everywhere. So out of desperation, we force them to alternative channels. We're the blame if we don't go into our neighborhoods and give them market pricing. Those loans are not going to default. They're not going to default. You know what? I don't even want to talk about that deported word. It breaks my heart. But let me tell you something. I've seen it. When somebody's been deported, a crazy thing happened. Their family stepped up, okay? Their family stepped up and they made that payment because there's honor and there's gratitude for what you did for their family. So this subprime thing, there is no place for that. You know what? We got to get some caps in place. We're putting people in coffins, okay? And I call cars that you're buried in coffins. We're ruining lives. Okay, we're taking 5 years. We're enslaving them and impoverishing them to debt. And the car's worth $5,000, $3,000, and they owe $10,000, and they're screwed. They're screwed. I'm going to be blunt about it because somebody wanted to make money on somebody that's trying to advance a people, that's trying to bring their family up, and then we go out and we short circuit the system and screw them. So we all have to step up as missionaries now. And I am telling you. Honestly, if there was justice in this world, the Itin lending would have the best pricing of all loans in the United States. The Rockefellers shouldn't get interest rates as low as the Latinos because the Latinos pay back at 100%.
John, I have to apologize. I should have sent you a mic so you could drop it. But we'll solve that for other webinars that we invite you to. So now I want to transition over to Rosa. Rosa, you can feel free to jot into this discussion. But also I wanted to ask you a bit more about, because this perceived risk also has to do with relationships with the regulator. There's this myth that Itin is, it can get you into trouble with your regulator. So I just wanted you, from your experience in New York, which is obviously extensive, to talk to us a bit about that. But feel free to participate in this. Definitely, right, go ahead.
Yeah, well, of course, I think in our organization, we are very sensitive
Hola,
to
Rosa.
the fact of having or witnessing that there is a different, can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Okay. So, but yeah, I think one of the reasons, and I always, when we interact with other colleagues from different organizations or different credit unions, we understand that there is this concern in terms of regulator, right? And how we are going to handle that kind of reality also. So I think from our end, what we do is trying to follow the same, what is it called? From the moment that we are opening an account, we make sure that we are doing everything related to follow and be in compliance. So all our processes are really approved by the board of members, board of directors. So that means that we have a strong interaction between the board as well as the implementation of new policies and updating policies, and see, for example, if we want to open new accounts, what will be the documents that will be accepted and approved. So in terms of that, there is something very helpful in New York City, which is the municipal ID that can be also accepted as an alternative proof of information or proof of documents that borrowers can or members can present or can provide. And from that end, we have everything outlined in terms of opening accounts or getting new members. From the part of lending, I think since we are also an alternative lender and we work with the small business community, which also a total different reality, right? We are doing the evaluation or verification of income or proof of income. I read one of the questions around how do we manage to do the underwriting if the borrowers don't have pay stubs or what everybody understands or see as proof of income, right? So we educate, and that's when really our trainings and the technical assistance we offer helps. And it's because we educate people and teach them how to track their income on a weekly basis, especially if they have work who pay them in cash, right? So I think we have developed different methods and ways to clarify and also do the proper underwriting and managing our risk. But everything is outlined in our policies, and everything is also, for example, right now, 2 weeks ago, we have the BSA training with Andrea Lally that came from Inclusiv, and she sort of reviews our compliance processing. So I think we try to be covered, but not only for this group of members, but in general, because as I said, we don't do or differentiate our lending between Itin borrowers and conventional borrowers.
Excellent. Thank you, Rosa. And Richard, I wanted to go back to something that you talked about in the introduction. You said that you know, doing Itin lending wrong or serving the Hispanic community in a way that was not comprehensive could actually hurt all credit unions. Could you elaborate a bit on that, Richard?
Yeah, I'll talk about an experience that I personally had. So I went on Spanish radio and talked about our Itin program and answered a few questions, from callers. And about 2 weeks later, I got an urgent message from the DJ who interviewed me saying that we had mistreated someone who had gone into one of our branches to open an Itin account. And I was horrified. My first instinct was, oh my God, my worst nightmare. So I got more information. It turned out what I was told was that this person went into a branch and went to open an account with an Itin, and they were called an illegal alien. And they were told that that the credit union didn't serve illegal aliens and asked to leave. And so I was obviously horrified. The DJ was horrified because he thought I had gone on the air and lied to him and to all the listeners. Long story short, it turned out to be another credit union. It wasn't our credit union that they had walked into, and that credit union apparently isn't prepared to handle this market. And the biggest, fortunately, just to end the story, I went back on the radio and explained, it wasn't us. And the person actually called in the next day and profusely apologized for making a mistake of calling it or saying it was our credit union. But the lesson for me, and the one big concern I have, is that Itin lending is not something to go into lightly. There's so much political divisiveness around immigration right now.
Yeah.
You don't know if you haven't trained your staff. You're dealing with different cultures, either behind the counter or in front of the counter. And you need to make sure that people know how to communicate, that they're accepting, that they're understanding. They may hear something that they're not used to. What's the communication need to be like? And, I come from a different perspective from what John is coming from, because I'm in downtown Seattle, which is very affluent. So we have to kind of have two personalities, if you will. We're dealing with mainstream members and we deal with low income members. So we have to make sure our staff is very well trained to communicate and treat everyone with respect. And unfortunately, that doesn't happen everywhere. So my words around, this being a risk is, if you haven't prepared your staff, if you haven't trained empathy, and really, we've taken the entire credit union through poverty simulations. So we took all 150, 165 employees through an all-day poverty simulation to show them what it was like to be poor, just to show them what it's like when someone can't make a payment on their car loan, and what that experience was. And it was very emotional. So it really helped our staff understand, wow, we need to show compassion here. I understand now why we're doing this, and there's buy-in. So my warning, if it's a warning, is don't go into this as a next promotion or a next new product rollout. You really need to have an infrastructure. And I'm a huge proponent of Juntos Avanzamos. They'll give you a checklist. It's a long one, and it'll make sure that you've checked off all the things that you need to be doing in order to serve this market. Otherwise, you run a risk of reputation, and that reputation can go up in flames. And when I said it could hurt our industry, is people hear credit union, like on the radio, all they heard was credit union. They didn't hear the name of Seattle Credit Union or the other credit union. They just heard credit union. So that's just my warning. Please go into this with eyes wide open, with really good intention and intentionally, and get that certification, understand the market that you're going after, and understand what that market comes with and the needs behind that market.
Renee, can I jump in? Because Richard really nailed a few things. Richard, incredible, and thank you. You know what, gang? It's deeper than that. Honestly, you got to hire right. Really, you can't give a poor person's journey to a wealthy person. The empathy will never be heartfelt. I mean, for me, what motivated me in my life? I talked to you about my neighborhood. It's a 5'6" redheaded Irish woman, my mother. And she used to go in the shower and turn on the water so I couldn't hear her cry because there was no money, and she would beat on the wall. And I take that journey. I wanted to become a banker so that no other mothers would ever cry in the shower over money. That's what motivated me in my life. And then my friends being taken advantage of because nobody had taught to them. So you know what, when I hire, I'm looking for somebody that can relate. I'm looking for somebody who has fought and thought for what they have, that it's been a journey. What's your journey? My newest hire, Braden Lewis, he had the job. He won me when he said, I was raised by a single mother. That was it. He had a journey and he had an understanding of objections or things you have to overcome in life. So not only do we train them and we try to make them care, but they also have to have the background that they understand what it is like to be poor. And I love that poverty simulation, but boy, oh boy, until you've been poor, you know, remember the old $5 loan in the neighborhood back before there, you know, we're a financial institution. There used to be hey, you got $5 to payday, or you got $5 for gas money to payday. Those are experiences that we have to have. So, and I have to give all credit to Juntos Avisamos. Let me tell you this. The greatest thing about the Juntos designation is that it assured me that we were living it. It is not public relations. It is not a sticker on the door. Okay. When I talked to Pablo and Renee after our great ceremony where we became the first institution in the state of Indiana, I was very proud to tell them, guess what? Next day, nothing changed. As a matter of fact, can I be honest with you? The event was so wonderful. Mayor Pete came and it was just such a gorgeous event. But if I was to be honest with all of you as my friends, I wanted everybody to leave town. It wasn't about the ceremony and the celebration. We were already doing these things and we didn't have to make any changes. We just had to go out and do our work the next day. When all the dog and pony show was over, the Juntos Avisamos checklist, we were living it, we were walking it, we weren't talking it. So the fact of the matter is, before you ever go for it, you probably have already earned that designation. It will help guide you to make sure it's formalized. It will make sure that you haven't missed something or there's not something you thought of. They're the greatest partner of my career. I want to say that right now. Inclusiv and Juntos Avisamos are the greatest partners of my entire career. And it inspires me every single day, as all of you do. And though I'm not Hispanic by blood, I am Hispanic by family and by neighborhood and by upbringing. So please hire folks that can relate to folks that have struggled. There is nobody that was born in the penthouse that is ever going to understand what it was like to be in the outhouse.
Yeah, I want to point out a few challenges, however, that we face when we work doing lending for Itin holders, right? Before we run out of time. One is that, for example, in our case, we report to the 3 credit bureaus, but we know that when we pull credit reports, we cannot necessarily find credit history from the 3 credit bureaus. So I think that's one challenge that it may be, and I hope we can do some sort of advocacy, right? And see how we can face or change that. And the other is around the fact that the Itin community and the immigrant community is entrepreneurial by nature, right? So one of the things that I noticed that we don't have much are exactly business loans for the Itin holders or business loans for the small business community. And I think even when it takes a little bit more of work and technical assistance and such, I think we are also losing or missing opportunity as credit unions because this is a niche of market that the traditional financial industry is not going to serve or work for. And I think we should do, or we should try to develop something to improve and change that. Yeah, those were my 2 points, in addition to my agreement that we have to train our team. I think working with any immigrant community is beyond of only translating to the language they speak, right? It's really understanding how they act, what moves them, and also how they used to treat each other. So I think that's part of working with any immigrant community, regardless if they are Latinos or from any other ethnic group. And the other is that let's remember that when we talk about the Hispanic community, it doesn't mean that necessarily everyone is poor or low income. So I think we also need to kind of change that sort of idea, right? That we have about the group developing different products and services oriented to different groups. We should do the same if we are trying to work with the Itin community or the Latinx community as well.
Renee, if I can just 2 quick points, because John sparked reminded me of 2 things. One is the diversification of staff. I'm really proud that we have a very diverse staff, and I'm even more proud that over 50% of our board is minority. But that took a tremendous amount of work. And one of the things that we were really good about is screening for people who do have personal experience in the markets that we're trying to go into, starting with our board. So if you don't have that board support, it's even tougher. So I wanted to bring that up as a big point. And I forgot the other point, so you can keep going.
All right, well, thank you so much for our panelists. Now we have a couple of minutes and we do have some outstanding questions that I would like the panelists to answer as fast as possible. Now there's a question by Alvaro Macias. Hola, Alvaro, good to see you here. The question is, what options do you have to verify income for Itin mortgages?
Bank statements. Basically, we require at least 24 months of bank statements as part of the training. We work with them. So we really try to make sure that they understand the importance of sort of formalize their income if they don't have pay stubs, and also tax returns.
All right, thank you, Rosa. We have another question for Marco Padilla. The question is, how are you handling borrowers that use a Social Security in the past that was not issued to them? We see credit reports that have deceased SAIs reported. Is it okay to ignore these on a move forward basis? What are credit unions doing to address this? Now, this is a bigger discussion, about Social Securities and Itin. If you could all take a moment to talk a bit about that.
That's tricky, right? Because basically, if somebody uses a different person's Social Security, I don't think we can. I don't think that's something we should. I don't know if Richard or John have experience with that.
We on that aspect, we were very careful even for the borrower, because if they're providing fraudulent information, it basically gets them to cross a line. So that's a very difficult area, and I can honestly say I'm very grateful that I haven't really been put in that position yet. I mean, there's been conversations, but there's been no formal applications that have touched me. I'm sure there have been in the neighborhood, of course, with Maria's staff, but it hasn't crossed my desk, and I'm wholeheartedly happy about that.
Yeah, I think I'm basically in the same camp as John. I have heard of the issue being brought up. I couldn't tell you how we handle it, other than we would look at it from a standard fraud perspective. In other words, and this is where you get into, we preach a lot about sitting down with people and understanding their story, right? So if someone comes in and says, hey, I don't have a Social Security number, and they apply for an ITIN, and they're able to produce bank statements or something to show that, whatever it may be, to show income, we have to start constructing a picture and then make that decision based on what we're able to put together. It's not a simple policy that says, if this, then do that. It just gets very complicated,
That's right. And of course, this is all about trying to adapt to a reality, but also being responsible as a financial institution, right? So that's that. We have an additional question, and that's from Diana Cervantes from Premier America. Hola, Diana, gracias por acompañarnos. And I believe that this goes back again to income verification. The question is, how do you verify income employment when the borrower's pay stubs shows a Social Security work purpose, but the borrower is applying with an ITIN? So the pay stub shows Social Security, but they're applying with an ITIN.
That's similar to the first question. However, if they have the proper documentation in the ITIN, I'm taking the check stub. So, I mean, there's my answer. If they have, if they've gone through the ITIN process, I look at that as that the employer's failed. I don't take that out on the family. I do unsecured lending to the ITIN market and the immigrants. And that's always a big point too, especially Richard knows, because he lives out there in the Pacific Northwest.
People keep, everybody assumes an I-10 or immigrant loan is all Latino. There's folks coming into this country all the time. And, we're inclusive. We're for everybody. Yes, I love the Latinos. I do. But I want to love everybody. I mean, we want to get everybody that is, listen, our job is who's ever in a rainstorm is to show up with some sun and an umbrella. Can we all agree on that? So whatever I can do to get you out of the rain, I'm going to do it.
All right, any additional comments from our panelists?
I would like to say, I hope everybody, I don't know who's out there, but please send me a LinkedIn connect. I'd love to be linked in with all of you. My cell phone number is on there with my email. I'm very active on LinkedIn, and I'd love to be connected to all of you. And if anybody has any questions, call me. I'll talk to all of you. My cell is 219-308-5171. I've got nothing but time for all of you so we can all do this together.
Thank you, John.
I agree with John, and I invite you to also join via LinkedIn, but of course, check our website, neighborhoodtrustfcu.org. We have all the list of products and services we offer there, and we can start a conversation, and hopefully we can do something bigger for the immigrant community, right? So I think that's the whole point and objective of this, at least this session, I think.
Richard, some final words before we say goodbye.
Yeah, first off, thank you for putting this together, Renee. I think it was really good timing for it. And I think I would fail my duty as chair of Inclusiv not to promote Inclusiv and the services. If you want to go into Itin lending and you're here watching this webinar to get it, just to get your feet wet and try to figure out which direction to go, Inclusiv has, to me, the best resources. If it wasn't for Inclusiv, it's just like John said, I started with the infamous Pablo, who helped me, get into low income, servicing the low income. And it was Inclusiv that helped me understand how to get my LID, my CDFI, my Juntos Avanzamos, connected me with my own city, which was crazy, the city of Seattle, to do my first citizenship loan. So a lot of people contact my credit union asking me for copies of procedures on I-10 lending, policies, our secret, and I tell them, you know what, I'd love to share, but I'll talk to you after you talk to Inclusiv and enroll in the program, because otherwise I can't take you seriously. And for some reason, the inquiries have slowed down quite a bit since we started saying that, but that's probably what I would share.
Thank you, Richard. And before we go, I love what's going on in the chat, particularly about how the credit unions that are doing this, are all into educating members and having them on a journey. And that, I think that as long as you work on that member and make sure that the member is educated and understands why having an ITIN is important and formalizing their income, then down the road, it makes things easier. Right, from a lending perspective, for you to be able to help them. But that takes resources, it takes staffing, it takes time, it takes a particular culture and vision. And of course, if you don't have those in place, then in the end of the day, you might run into situations that can hurt you as a credit union, but also hurt your reputation in the community. And I'm so happy that we were able to discuss this and have this conversation. Thank you so much, Rosa, Richard, and John, for always saying, yes to participate in these panels and sharing your wisdom and your experience with the credit union movement. It is really appreciated. Thanks all of you for joining us this afternoon. We will be sharing the presentation and the recording of this webinar with all registrants and also with our Juntos Avanzamos network. Probably be sharing that tomorrow afternoon. Now, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me at my email, r vargasmartinez@inclusiv.org. I wish I could have gotten the one Pablo has, just Pablo@Inclusiv, but I decided to complicate my life. And so here we go. I'll put it over in the chat, but feel free to please reach out if you have any questions. Once again, thank you so much and good afternoon and onwards.
Bye.